Okay, you're curious, aren't you? What is this huge mistake that so many card makers are making? It has to do with measurements. I know that ugly word, measurements, that we all get frustrated with and confused about. And you know what? I've done a little bit of research in the last couple of months, and I have realized that there are so many of us that don't actually understand the card base that we need in our current region and our area and in our measurements. And it's so important. It's like the beginning of card making is the measurements. So you may have your own little theory on what your card measurements are going to be. However, what I want to talk to you about today is the base card measurement that is accepted universally, globally in each country, so that you can get the most out of your card stock, so that you're not confused, because there's a lot of confusion out there, and I have realized in the last few weeks just how much confusion there is. So to clear it up, we have two different types of card stock in the world. There is letter-sized cardstock. Letter-sized cardstock is found in Canada and the United States. There is A4 cardstock that is found in the rest of the world. Now, those two types of cardstock are completely different to one another. Like, completely different. You cannot compare apples with pears in this situation. So what is happening is people are watching here in Australia, say for instance, or in the UK, they're watching someone in the United States doing, some measurements with inches, and they're so confused. They're like, why isn't my card working out? And why am I wasting so much cardstock? It's because those measurements are not for you and for your cardstock size. So I'm going to break this down and show you exactly how you can get the right measurements for you personally in your country, which is so exciting, because once you unlock these measurements, we're going to have a lot more fun when we do card making. There's going to be a lot less confusion. If you're a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator or you're a consultant for another company, you're going to do less confusion for your customers, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of customers out there that are super, super confused, and they have been messaging me like, oh my goodness, I'm so confused. And ever since I got your card templates, which I will show you in a moment, I have understood where I've gone wrong. So the base card measurement. So for your card base, the main universal idea is that you should be able to cut your standard cardstock in your country in half. If you cut it in half, that is a card base. So we'll see this here. So if you cut it in half here in Australia, that is our half. And that is our card base. And that is universally accepted, that that is a card base. The one for the United States and for Canada is this size. Now, as you can see here, these are very, very different card bases. The Canadian and US card size is shorter and a little bit wider, and the Australian, the rest of the world, is taller and a little bit more narrow. So if you were trying to make a card using the measurements for the US or Canada and you're in another country, you're in big trouble. You're going to waste a lot of cardstock. In fact, you will only get one card base per sheet of cardstock. That's a lot of wastage, right? It also adds a lot of confusion when you start layering your card, because what happens is you don't know what your next layer is going to be. And when you don't know what your next layer is going to be, I look back at what it was like when I first started card making. It was over 10 years ago, and we just eyeballed it. We just looked at it and went, I think that's right, cut. Oh no, we've cut too much off. It created so much frustration and so much anxiety that it actually started to take the fun out of card making. And we don't want that. Card making is so much fun. So what is the solution? I've come up with a solution for you all. So please share this if you think you know friends, customers demonstrators, anyone that you know that you think will benefit from this. Because I'm telling you, there is a big issue in this area. And if we are card makers, we have to know what our measurements are, our beginning, the base of our card. And again, if you have different measurements, absolutely go for it. However, if you don't use these base universal card measurements that are universally accepted, it means that tutorials are going to be very confusing. It makes it very difficult to do tutorials for your customers because it's not a universal measurement that everyone uses. So there are really great benefits in making sure that you're using what is culturally accepted in card making. I have interviewed a number of top Stampin' Up! Demonstrators, and they keep coming to the same conclusion that your base determines your layers. And our base, our card base, is cutting whatever your cardstock base is in half. And that determines every layer from then on. If you are not cutting your cardstock in half, then you're going to come up with a lot of different issues, and you can create a lot of confusion for customers, for new team members, a lot of different people around the world. So what is my solution? And this is the best thing. It is a really good solution. I have created, and I have realized, I actually thought there was just 2 measurements, but there's actually 3 globally. The 3 measurements globally are, we have letter size cardstock with inches. So this is for the US and for Canada. So if you go and have a look at my cardstock templates, I have cut these specifically with letter cardstock in mind. And when you cut that letter cardstock in half, these are your layers that will go perfectly. You won't have to think. You won't have to, oh, what measurement am I going to do? No, it's all done for you. And this is so perfect. If you run classes, if you run workshops, if you are a new stamper, if you've been stamping for years and you've been struggling with measurements for a long time, or if you're a visual person, the card templates are brilliant, because not only do they help you to measure exactly what you need for each layer, but I have found using these that they give you some really great layout ideas. So you could get your card base and go, what would I like my first base to be? Yeah, I think that looks nice. And don't look at the colors. The colors are merely just a guide, so that when I do tutorials, when I talk about measurements and things like that, I don't talk in terms of actual measurements anymore. On my blog, I say use the Gorgeous Grape card base, and then your first layer measurement is going to be Poppy Parade. And that tells, no matter who it is in the world, it tells them what they need to use in their measurements in their country. We've unlocked the code. We've cracked the code internationally. And that is what is so unique and special about these card templates, is it transcends all international borders, and it works for every sort of person in using it the proper way, universal way, the majority of what people do way. And again, you don't have to do it, but if you want to make it easier for your team, for your customers, then please look at doing it this way, so that we create less confusion and we make it easier to craft. Because this is the beginning. If we can't get the beginning right, we're in a bit of trouble, aren't we? So for instance, I have a few layers here that you may be wondering, oh, what is that layer there that doesn't even connect with another layer? It's like a really random one. But for instance, you could have designer series paper cut to the size of the Poppy Parade layer. And then you could have these beautiful layers in the middle that has an image or some stamping with sentiment in the middle. So it's going to help you to visualize, because especially if you have a smaller stamp, sometimes we're like, I don't know how to use the small stamp on such a big space. So what you do is you get these layers to create a smaller space, and then the image sits nicely in this area. So you can actually get these templates and line it up against the stamp set to see which layer is going to be the best for the stamp set that you have. And you can create amazing layers. Like, they're constantly being updated, constantly new layers. And the best thing is that they coordinate with each other in the sense of, we also have A4 cardstock and people who use inches with A4. This is the new one that I didn't know about. But then we also have the A4 metric people. So these are for the rest of the world. So not US and Canada. US and Canada use the inches with letter size cardstock. So that's the one for you. So the rest of the world, this was a really, really big thing for me to realize, because there's some people who work in inches, but with A4 cardstock. Now, if those people who work in inches, if they use the letter cardstock inches measurements, they're in a lot of trouble. They're going to waste a lot of cardstock. So you want to make sure that what measurements you are using is correct for your region and for your cardstock that you're using, so that you get the most out of your paper. You're not confused. I know I've spoken to a lot of customers about this, and they said, I've never been able to cut my measurements properly. I'm not a confident card maker, and it's all because of these measurement issues. So I have these card templates in a tutorial format. Now, the reason why I've done it in a tutorial format is I did have them in actual packs and it got out of control. I couldn't do it. I have a business to run. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Australia, and I just did not have time to cut them all, pack them all, and I want to keep adding to it. So I thought, what's the best way for all of us, one, to learn how to cut our measurements correctly, and two, to make sure that I can keep you updated and keep reinventing new layers? Well, the best thing is a tutorial. So if you get the tutorial, you could get them in all layers, which I would highly recommend if you're not in the United States or in Canada. Then you can compare it and show your customers, your team members, just how different the two card layers are. Like when they visually see that these two here are completely different cards, it's really going to help them to understand that they need to be careful what measurements they follow online, because we don't want them being frustrated, and we don't want them like, oh, I did this card and it didn't work out and it's such a strange size, it's a different size to what I normally do. So help them to understand what the differences are and why. You could even send them this video, because it will really help them to see that is why different tutorials result in a different sized card. So I really hope that this helps a lot of you with your measurement woes, and also helps you to understand that we are in a responsible position to make sure that our customers are getting the right options. From now on, I know with my customers, I will be giving them the option of both inches and metric in A4. And I did not know that before doing this little survey that I've done, because we all work in different ways. Apparently here in Australia, some are quilters, and so they love to work in inches, even though we use a metric system. So it's really, really interesting to me. And I think that having these card templates will definitely help a lot of the confusion. It will make card making quicker, more fun. It's more visual for your customers. They can see what layers they're doing, and they're also getting used to cutting the cardstock themselves. And the best way to give your customers and your team members confidence is for them to know what they're cutting, what layers are they cutting and what size. It's all there in front of them. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, a lot of the frustration, and means we can get down to business and have fun card making. So I really hope that you enjoyed my video today, unlocking the huge mistake that so many card makers are making. And if you have any comments, please pop them below. I love hearing from you. And I know that this is going to help so many card makers around the world to understand the difference between letter cardstock, A4 cardstock, inches, metric, like crazy. So I know that this is really, really going to help. My links are below. If you want the tutorials, you can get all three. You can get 2 of them. You can get 1 of them, whatever suits you and your needs. And if you have any questions, please ask. Have a wonderful week. See you, everyone. If you enjoyed this, make sure you follow me. Come over to my blog, and I'm on Insta, YouTube, and more.